Cars are some of the most common things we come across on a daily basis, but it's surprising how most people don't know a thing about them. And sometimes misconceptions can be spread by many well-meaning people. Other misconceptions can also be spread by people with far more nefarious agendas. So with that being said, here are 4 misconceptions people actually believe about cars explained. Or in popular internet clickbaity nature, 4 car myths debunked. Bumped. I just like doing that. Anyways, my name is Lassika from CeeDrawsCars and welcome to a new video, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed writing it. So a few days ago I was rewatching the Grand Tour, and in one of the episodes the Grand Tour trio made a passing comment about the Dodge Charger being based on the old Mercedes E-Class platform, basically equating it to an old German taxi in terms of engineering and design. Now which exact episode it was I can't recall, but if you do, please let me know in the comment section down below. So I googled it to see if there was any truth, and that actually led me to finding the first myth. The Dodge Charger of the 21st century is just an old Mercedes-Benz underneath. Well, Mopar haters like to spread this one around, whether they're trolling on the forums or on the YouTube comments, but I've also seen auto journalists who are paid to inform as well as entertainers, passing it around like a freshly baked potato just because they want to win the telephone game of internet journalism. Well, to be fair, I did believe something similar. I used to believe that the Dodge Charger was actually based off the Mitsubishi Galant. Go figure. I don't know what led me to think that. Maybe it was the similar rear end and the fact that when I sat in the car, I felt that the floor was unusually high in both cars because I've sat in both of them. And the roofline also looks almost identical, so yeah. Why wouldn't I believe that? However, the truth is, like the Merc myth, it's simply not true. Or rather, I found more evidence against it than for it. So why do people believe it if it isn't true? Well, here's why. In the 1990s leading up to the 2000s, the Chrysler Corporation went into an alliance with Daimler-Benz called Daimler Chrysler. And they also had an alliance with Mitsubishi called Diamond Star Motors, both with the aim of helping the foreign car manufacturers tap into the lucrative North American market. Now, with most car alliances, companies share components and parts with each other, which is probably why people believe the myth. Plus, the Dodge Charger actually came out during the Daimler Chrysler era, which adds fuel to the fire. You know, come to think of it, I actually remember a case study in my high school business textbook about how they broke up back in 2007, and how the Daimler Chrysler Corporation was a failure, partly because the two companies didn't see eye to eye, and Mercedes were reluctant to share their high-class tech with the peasant wannabe Chrysler with their plebeian 300C. Oh look, Heinz, they want to make the luxury cars just like us. Oh ho ho! I'm just kidding, okay, I got nothing against German car manufacturers. In fact, AMG, love AMG cars, love M cars. Just kidding. However, the Dodge Charger does share some parts with Mercedes-Benz cars, but it's not a texture and model swap like the myth states. It's far more subtle than that. In fact, the parts shared are interior buttons and switches, some suspension parts from the E55 AMG, the all-wheel drive models shared the all-wheel drive system from Mercedes, and of course the transmission was shared from Mercedes cars. So yeah, not the whole car. While researching, I found a pretty good article that details almost, if not all, the parts that are shared between the Mercedes E-Class and the Dodge Charger. I will link it down below for your perusal. Anyways, with that being said, on to the next myth. Myth number 2. Aluminium isn't as safe as good old steel. I think it's common first world knowledge that car manufacturers are integrating more aluminium in their vehicles, and they might even start making entire cars from the stuff in the future. Knowing this much, I can see the line of logic some people draw when they believe that aluminium cars are less safe than their steel counterparts, and it goes something like this. Soda cans are made of aluminium and you can crush it with your bare hand. So, why would you even consider making an entire car out of this weak sauce material? In a crash, it's probably gonna crumple like a notepad during history class and kill the occupants inside. Are car makers this sadistic? Don't worry, they're not. Purpose is the key to debunking this myth. You see, the purpose of a soda can is to store a drink in a strong, lightweight container that can be produced en masse and cheap. Emphasis on the word cheap. The aluminium used in soda cans is wafer thin and produced in a different way than the aluminium used in cars. As for the myth of aluminium being less safe than steel, well, that's false. According to the Aluminium Association, yes, that's a real thing, I will link their article in the description. Anyways, according to the Aluminium Association, aluminium is really versatile, weighing a third less than the equivalent mass of steel, yet when forged can be as strong, if not stronger. Fun fact, the Humvee's body is made of aluminium. Yes, that military vehicle popularized by Hollywood and video games, you know, the war veteran grandfather of the Hummer SUV? Yep, all aluminium, baby. In the case of a car, aluminium absorbs the impact in a crash better than steel, which is what you want in a crash. You see, aluminium can also be engineered to bend the right way, directing the force of the impact away from the driver and protecting the occupants. So, the main takeaway is that design and purpose is more important than the materials used, and it can even often dictate the materials used. And the main reason that most people think aluminium is weak is because they mainly encounter it in a soda can that was designed to be cheap and disposable. Speaking of cheap and disposable, this brings us to our next myth. Myth number 3. American cars are only made in America. Just kidding about the disposable part. I like American cars. A lot. This doesn't have to only apply to American cars. This can apply to other manufacturers as well. Japanese cars are made in Japan, German cars are made in Germany, so on and so forth. You get the picture. A lot of people like to believe that cars are built in their home country. Well, without a shred of a doubt, I can say this myth is false. These days, cars are built all over the world. For example, a significant number of Volkswagens are manufactured in South Africa and Brazil, both for the international and domestic markets. China is also becoming, if it already hasn't become, the manufacturing hub of the auto industry. Almost everything from Audis to Volvos are being built there. Funnily enough, a lot of Japanese cars are being built in the US. Now, this fact alone gave American manufacturers a headache a few years ago when the US government proposed levying a trade tariff, a kind of tax, if you will, on all cars imported from outside the US or built with parts manufactured on foreign soil. Basically, starting an international trade war in favor of domestic products and factories. Why was this an issue? Well, surprisingly, a large number of American cars aren't American. Well, maybe they are, but they're certainly not built there. The big three, which are GM, Chrysler, and Ford, have factories all over the world too, and they are responsible for most cars that they make. But what compels a manufacturer to spread out instead of staying home? If you ask that question to any big-wig American executive, he's gonna give you an answer like, "Well, son, home is where the heart is, but it's not where the profits are." Here's a simple formula to show you how to calculate profits, and it also shows you how a large company looks at the bigger picture. Here it is. The price you sell the products for minus how much it costs to make equals a profit if the result is a positive number, loss if it is negative. Most companies try to be competitive with their product pricing, sometimes by offering more or a better quality for a similar price of a similar product, or by making their prices cheaper than other products. It's not the full picture of how companies make a product competitive, but it's enough to understand that more competitive or competitively priced products sell better. One of the ways to be competitive while not losing money on each product sold is to reduce the cash spent on making it, either directly or indirectly. Which is why car companies move their factories to other countries. Lower taxes, cheaper wages, being closer to the raw materials needed like the metals, or closer to the people buying the cars to decrease shipping costs helps reduce the money spent on running the factories responsible for building the cars. So in short, this widespread belief of this myth is understandable. However, it is false in the 21st century. Cars are built all over the world since there is a wider global need for them, and car manufacturers wanting to fiercely compete with their rivals will find any way to reduce their costs without sacrificing too much profit and get their cars out to people all around the world, even if it means moving their factories all over the world to do so. Before we get to our fourth myth, here are some honorable mentions, just like Watch Mojo. Oh, give me strength. And the first honorable mention is Korean cars suck. Okay, Korean cars suck. Is this even a myth? Now, I don't mean that Korean cars suck, but I do mean that this statement seems more like an opinion than myth, as Korean cars are always gonna suck to somebody. Well, objectively speaking, they don't suck. Have you forgotten about the Genesis luxury car, or the Hyundai Genesis Coupe, the Kia Stinger, and of course the Hyundai N series? They're good performance and luxury cars, and they're Korean. If you're looking for objective data-driven evidence, a 2019 JD Power survey reports that Genesis, Kia, and Hyundai, the only three Korean car marques sold to consumers around the world, outperform American and European car brands in their initial quality survey. Now, even though the JD Power survey have their issues, they can serve as a good indicator of a car's reliability and buyer satisfaction. Donut Media made a good video explaining the JD Power survey. If you haven't seen it, I'll link the video for your viewing pleasure. So, in short, Korean cars are always gonna suck to some people, but in an objective sense, Korean cars have been the best they've ever been, and they're set to become world beaters in the future. As for our second honorable mention, here's the second one. Electric cars catch fire more easily than gasoline engines. For the time being, this one is false, simply because gasoline is a flammable liquid and lithium batteries don't catch fire or explode unless they were made by Samsung back in 2015. It's only a sick burn if you say it is and play air horn sound effects, but I'm not going to because it's not worth it. The reason people believe this myth is possibly due to something called the availability heuristic, also known as the availability bias. Electric cars are a relatively new addition to mainstream technology usage, so any and everything that happens to them will be reported by the media, electric car fires included, so there will be more news available and shared about them catching on fire. And you know how sensationalized the news gets, driving fear into the hearts of even the most rational of people. The availability heuristic occurs when you think about something and your mind jumps to a conclusion based on what information it knows is most available. The news tends to circle around unusual, newsworthy, and sometimes tragic topics, and they milk it dry until a new, more lucrative topic comes along. So if you keep up to date with the news, you're likely gonna be bombarded with the same news stories. This problem actually compounds when you realize that social media feeds you the news you want to hear based on your activity and feeds you a lot of it, which makes it seem far more significant than it actually is. Here's a good example. A lot of people fear flying because there seems to be a lot of news stories surrounding plane crashes. However, statistically speaking, air travel is actually the safest mode of transportation there is. Hence why airplane crashes appear on the news, because they're that rare. It seems to be a similar story with electric cars, as data from the UK, a nation pushing for electrification mind you, shows that the London Fire Brigade dealt with 54 electric car fires compared to 1,898 fossil fuel car fires in 2019. However, I assume this number will rise in the future when electric cars catch up with or outnumber gas-powered cars, so technically, electric cars would be more likely to catch fire than gasoline cars, but by then, companies would have figured out a way to prevent them from catching fire. At least I hope so. So for now at least, this myth is bunk. However, this topic turned out to be too nuanced to include in a simple true-false debunk video, as electric car fires actually emit more noxious chemicals. They're also worse for the environment than gas car fires, and firefighters aren't currently prepared for it. Plus, an electric car fire needs more time and water or more resources to put out than a gasoline fire. You could read about it if you're interested in the link down below. Anyways, let's move on to the next honorable mention. Here it is. Ford Model Ts came only in the color black. You could have it in any color you wanted as long as it was black, as the famous Henry Ford saying went. Well, this myth is only partially true, which is why it didn't make the actual list. Black was the only color that Model T came in from 1914 through 1925, and the reason was economical, not to make a style statement. Okay, I'll stop doing the Mighty Car Mods black thing now. Psych. Black was the only color paint that could be dried quickly because of how the paint was made back then, and speed was important at the Ford plant because of the number being pumped out. They were selling like a popular type of American pancake, and they had to match the demand or lose out. As more cars started coming out and competition mounted in the late 1920s, Ford had to rethink the black-only philosophy because of the choice available. Competitors had their eyes set on Ford sales, and they were offering various colors to be competitive, like I mentioned earlier, offering more for a similar price. Black had become the only color associated with Ford cars, and unless they were targeting funeral directors and Secret Service agents, that was not gonna cut it. Other colors were made available for 1926 and 1927, the last two model years for the Model T. So, without any further ado, let's go on to our final myth. And when I found out about this one, I thought it was really insane. Last but not least, myth number 4. Formula 1 cars can drive upside down. Sounds impossible, right? What if I told you this myth is actually 100% true? Psh, get out of here, you know what I'm saying, man? The only car I've probably ever seen driving in a tunnel upside down is in Men in Black, and that's obviously fiction. And now you come along to tell me that Formula 1 cars can do it in real life. You are therefore sentenced to be locked up in an asylum for your crimes against rational thinking and for committing the heinous sin of heresy, I say. Heresy! Okay, wait. Before you start chucking rotten tomatoes at me, hear me out. Well, it is true that F1 cars can drive upside down. In theory, at least. You see, the people who design an F1 car do so with exacting precision. Nothing is spared, not even expense. Everything on an F1 car has a purpose, and the sleek, minimal design and the big wings and the little aero bits serve to direct and manipulate the air that passes over it while moving, and it uses this air to push the car down into the ground. This is what is called downforce. Downforce is important because F1 cars are so powerful and so light, they can actually do burnouts at 160 km per hour, which sounds like the coolest thing ever to car fanboys. But it actually means less grip on the road and less control over the car, resulting in disaster, or at the very least, disastrous lap times. Engineers and designers can make the car grip the road better by making it heavier, which presses down on the tire, flattening out the part that touches the track and making it grippier. To make it easier for you to visualize, imagine or try flattening out a piece of Play-Doh on an object like a key and then peeling it off. You'll see that the part of the Play-Doh in contact with the object takes shape. That's kind of how F1 tires grip the road, and yes, they are sticky and malleable like Play-Doh, but not to the same extent. Thank goodness for that. Making an F1 car heavier makes it slower than the competition, so engineers and designers have figured out a way to use air resistance to make the car quote-unquote heavier at higher speed by directing the air so that it pushes on top of the car, hence creating downforce. You can learn about downforce from this really well done video from Engineering Explained, which I've linked in the description and in the info cards above. F1 cars can generate up to 1900 kilograms of downforce at speed. That's like having a phantom giraffe sitting on top of it, making the car stick to the ground. Or even the ceiling of a really long tunnel for that matter. Which is where, in theory, an F1 car can drive upside down. Now, why do I keep saying in theory? Well, there are many practical reasons for why an F1 car cannot be driven upside down in real life. Number 1 is money. F1 teams spend millions of dollars on one F1 car, and you think they're gonna risk it all just to debunk a silly internet myth? Not a chance. Plus, it poses a rather significant economic hassle to a local government just to close down a tunnel or build one specifically for a one-off test. Number 2 is mechanical. F1 engines are finely tuned and should work as intended, otherwise it will suffer from catastrophic failure. Also, due to how engines are designed, all the fuel and oil in the engine would rise to the top. Or is it sink to the top? Or is it sink to the bottom? Anyways, the engine's computer might go haywire as well, because there's just too many variables to contend with. It is possible that F1 teams can make engineering changes to adapt the F1 car to inverted driving, but it's pretty expensive and time consuming, and most of their efforts would be better spent on trying to win the next season. Unless they're Mercedes or Ferrari, that is. Number 3, of course, is the only reason an F1 car moves in the first place: the driver. Driving upside down at high speed is something a sane individual would never consider doing. Imagine being on an upside down roller coaster. The only difference is you're in full control of said roller coaster, and that roller coaster is traveling at 200 miles per hour for an extended period of time. The forces that an upside down F1 car in motion exerts on the human body can possibly cause partial blindness or blackouts, known in the military as G-force induced loss of consciousness, also known as G-Loc, which sounds like a West Coast rapper from the 90s, now that I think about it. Also, there is the definite possibility of motion sickness. It's tough enough trying to drive a F1 car upside down. What about when you puke in your helmet? What then? Nevertheless, the next best thing to real life is simulation. Am I right? That's why we like to live there. Am I right? I'm just kidding. That's where Driver 61 comes in. Driver 61, an automotive YouTuber otherwise known as Scott Mansell, has raced pretty much every single kind of racing car throughout his career since 2002, including F1 cars, and he has a video where he attempts to drive different race cars, of course including F1 cars, upside down. Of course, he explains some of the science behind which ones will and which ones won't drive upside down. I will definitely link it in the description because it is a video you should check out. After you watch that video, and if you enjoy his content, you should definitely check out his main channel where he explains all of the technical aspects of racing and race car engineering in an easy to understand format. As for the upside down F1 car myth, it is theoretically true but remains yet to be tested. And that wraps up the list. If you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed writing it, drop a like and subscribe for more semi-weekly uploads on car topics and car drawings. This was Lassika from CeeDrawsCars, and I hope you have a great week ahead of you. Thanks for watching.